rows, the back row, but then it could also be, you know, a prop, a second row and a flanker. You know, it could be hooker, the 2 second rows, etc., etc. And then the collective unit, so that's your scrum, your full line out. And then also think about, you know, what's the impact on the big picture. So how does your delivery off the top of the line out affect your attack from a back's perspective? And I'll try and touch on as much of that as I can. Okay, cool. So in terms of the scrum, this was put together with myself, Alistair Dickinson and Gary Strain, so who were tasked with looking at the scrum from an academy perspective and what would the priorities be at each age group. So under 16, we came up with, first of all, we want to improve core and neck strength for safety, for being able to get in an optimal body position, just again being able to maintain pressure and build on there as we go. So what I'm not going to go into too much around, you should go and do this, you should go and do that, around that kind of stuff. I've got a few exercises we can show, but linking with your S&C stuff at the club, and Sam said there's been some stuff delivered already that will probably, as you go through, we'll see how it links in. But core and neck strength is massive, and certainly it's not really something we want to wait until they're under 20s to start to develop. So yeah, that then impacts everything else. So scrum and lower is one of the things that we want to look at. When we see the videos, you'll see the height and try and pick out the correlation between the height as they go. So I'm going to show like under 16 regional, then Glasgow Warriors, then up to national, and hopefully we can see a little bit of what the difference is as they go. But being able to scrummage lower is a priority at under 16s, again, just because a lot of them lack the core and neck strength. If we can spend a bit of time working them a little bit lower, hopefully it improves what they're doing across everything. And then maintain effective body shape under pressure. So this used to be like we want to see them in a good body shape, and people talk about being able to get in a good body shape, which is key, but we decided to phrase it as maintain it under pressure. So it's not necessarily about, you know, going forward and winning the scrum and all that kind of stuff. It's, can they get in that body shape and hold it? Because that effectively is going to be the building blocks for as they go through the age groups. And then a one that we thought we felt quite strongly on is being able to play across the front row. So specific to the front row really is under 16s, can we get players playing 1, 2 and 3 so that they've got experience, and then as they kind of go and develop and move up, they've had experience there and they can kind of find their place, because it does help playing, you know, certainly as a prop playing both sides, you learn what is going on when you're playing against that opposition player, if that makes sense. So being able to play across the front row, so that would be something to challenge you guys on, is can you get your loose head playing tight head, your hooker playing loose head, etc., etc. And then again with the back five as well, it's not a bad thing. We obviously saw Scott Cummings move from 4 to 6 at the weekend. Maro Itoje does it a lot for England as well. Courtney Laws does it. So, you know, being able to, if you've got people that can play lock and back row, again, it just helps that experience that they have as they grow older. Okay, so moving on to 18. So we've spoke about the maintaining the body shape under pressure, but now looking at can maintain it when it's moving. So that's whether it's going forwards or backwards. If you're going back, you want to get back into a strong position, but can you keep that shape that's going to help you? And then collective timing. So that's just around the set. You know, making sure they're working together. You're seeing the clips at 16s. It's all very kind of individual, and they just go a bit mental sometimes. But at 18s, we really want to look at can they work together? Can their timing improve? And tighter connections. So that's around things like binds. So being able to hold a tighter bind, but also being able to, you know, connect with shoulders. So locks onto props, flankers onto locks, etc., etc., and maintaining that pressure, so that you can keep your body shape and you can keep the pressure moving forward. And then, so I'll just remove this. Consistency of process at 20s. So at 16s and 18s, it's very much about finding your setup and you know, playing about with it and learning it. When we get to 20s, we're really asking our players to have a consistent process so that, you know, every scrum setup's the same, because that brings a consistency of performance as well. If they can do it under pressure, you know, consistently, then it's one less thing that they'll have to think about. And also, again, it'll make sense when we see the clips around feet and stuff like that. Battle of the Bind. So again, this is starting to get into the famous dark arts a little bit, but I'll point it out a tiny bit as we in the videos, but it's just about how you can get an advantage with your bind. Now, again, this is when we're talking about under 20 national level, academy level. So please don't go away with under 16s and start speaking about how the tight head gets a better bind on to get onto the opposition loose head and stuff. Just keep that focus on those individual things. But the battle of the binds in the front row angles, just around how you maintain your shape and get a little bit of an advantage within the laws, obviously. But there's certain things that players can do that'll keep them in a strong position. Cool. So what I'm going to do now, if I can get it, is we'll go on to some clips. Sorry, I'm just having to juggle these various screens. Can we see that?
Yep, Clark, you got a thumbs up.
Hi, Sam, you're going to have to be my voice. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to show is the kind of difference as you go through the levels at 16s, 18s, 20s. That's the plan anyway. And then hopefully we can see, some of those points that I've highlighted, and then I'll kind of touch on like things that we would do and have done in the past to try and get to them. So ultimately we want to try and get them from under 16s to under 20s national and get better and better and better as we go. So this is just under 16s regional. So again, if we have a look, as I was saying, it's all a bit individual. Body heights are a bit all over the place. I'll just go back. Look, like feet position, it's not very uniform. And then again, losing that shape under pressure. We still get the ball, still won the ball, so we can play. But again, it's not the nicest looking scrum I've ever seen. And then going up to the kind of Glasgow Warriors level, so that's the next level up. A little bit better, a wee bit better timing. I would say that body shapes are still a wee bit all over the place, but there's a lot less movement and then we can get a shove on. But there's a lot less movement on the set and feet going all over the place. So that's looking a little bit better, but there's still things around height and stuff that we could look to improve. And then hopefully try to pick the best one, obviously. It doesn't always look great. But by the time you get to national level, you can see that the heights, it's not super low, but it's kind of consistent. And again, when the pressure comes on, they're starting to go up a wee bit, which we can speak about in a bit, but at least they're all kind of staying together and it looks like they're working as one. So again, if we go back to that first one, whereby it's all kind of different, lots of feet movement, feet going back, people standing up. And then by the time we get into the national stuff, it's a lot better. So kind of stuff that we would do to work with that is, this is just kind of some warm-up stuff, but it's looking at individual body shape. So in an ideal world, what we want to be able to do is draw a line kind of from the foot through the knee, and through the shoulder. So it's a little visual you can use with players now. I don't know who that player is, I can't remember his name, but he could be a little bit further back with his feet, but he's not too bad. That's me being very pernickety, but it's a decent position. So spending time in that position as much as we can, and just applying some pressure through head, core, etc., and just being able to hold it there. Now, obviously, comes with some caution around the neck and stuff like that, but we're at a kind of level or a stage where players generally, they don't mess about as much. But again, it's just an exercise that can be used as a warm-up. It's just about spending time in this position. So like a lot of scrummagings of the old day, you go and you hit a machine and that would be your scrummaging. But we would spend more time doing this than live scrums and full scrums. We would spend more time on little exercises. So again, it's just about maintaining that body position under pressure. So you can have one person hand down. Ideally, they kind of get their hands up. But again, Michael here on the right, if we think about that line, that we'd end up here. So he needs to get his feet back and drop his knees down. But again, it's just try to spend time under pressure without going full 8 on 8. These two are a little bit better. So again, That's much better. Now, when you're a bigger player, it's harder, generally less mobile. So again, that's why we speak about trying to do mobility, as much mobility stuff within the S&C world as we can. But again, if we look at that picture here, so that's pretty good, and that line doesn't really change, kind of depending on your height. It's if you get lower, your feet are generally further back, so it can go through. But again, it's just another little cue you can use with your players, or if you're videoing your sessions or anything like that, you can get them to have a look and imagine that line. And then another little exercise about when we're talking about maintaining that pressure. So one player's just trying to resist, and the player on the left try to go forward without, lifting his feet off the ground and running and chasing away. So again, that's just little warm-up exercise, individual exercises. Now this is on the 16s stuff, but it can push all the way through. 20s would do this, 18s would do this kind of stuff. It's like tackle technique or anything. It's little and often. The more time that they can spend in these positions. So we're looking at how we can scrumify, if you will, our S&C sessions. So rather than doing things like plank on your elbows and your feet extended, try to spend time in this position here and challenge your core that way, just to get more time. Because what you find is that when players come to under 16s, they won't have spent a lot of time in optimal positions just because of the varying sizes, weights, abilities. So it's how can we challenge them while still trying to do everything else, because it's not just about the scrum. So then from there we would go on to kind of 3-on-3. So this is these mini units I was talking about. So here we've got a loose head, a hooker and a lock against a tight head, a lock and a flanker. And this player's just providing somewhere for the tight head where he would have his bind. So he's just holding onto his hand. But if you are going to do this, make sure this player drops down, because otherwise he's going to end up with his arm, the tight head's arm will be rotated round. But again, it's just we just fold in. So we're not worried about the set. It's more about getting into a comfortable position and then applying pressure and try to keep that body position. So in here, you'll see Robbie is pretty extended. If we were to draw that line again, and the line would finish up here. There's a lot to fix, but it's about giving them time and giving them opportunities to do this. So we would spend quite a lot of time on this stuff, so that they've got that experience, and it doesn't take. What you might have found it yourselves, but when you go to 8-on-8, sometimes a lot of resets, people fall down. There's a lot of things to fix. This just gives us an opportunity to work with smaller groups, but get a lot of reps in essentially. From there, we would look to go 5v5, but then so this is with the national 16s, and we're only going to the bind. So we're bind, and then we're getting our feet in a position. So we're giving feedback on body position, etc., head position. So we've got you in there in quite a good position. But again, we're looking at across here, is everybody square? Is everybody in line? Is our height right? Are our feet in the right position? Without having to go into the set, which then could sometimes cause the problems. Again, as I said, people drop, etc. So if you get that bit right, generally, the rest is easier to follow. If your setup and on our bind isn't right, it can throw people off their body shape. So again, just crouch to bind, and then just hold in, and then that's it. So that's a rep of that. So again, it's just a way of getting people into good positions without having to go through a full scrum. Again, just from on the loose head side. So again, just giving them that experience and then stop, and because like the scrum, anybody that's been in one, you have to kind of feel what's going on. You get a feel for if you're in the right position, rather than somebody just telling you what to do. So, and then we would go on to 5v5 or 6v6, sorry, and then we would go through the full process. So again, we can see shoulders are below hips. If we put that line again, that would go right through here, rather than going from here to here. So Doug needs to get his feet back and get his knees down.
It's funny you mentioned he's actually on the call, Burney, so he's getting a live assessment.
Good. So yeah, that's kind of the process that we follow at 16s. It generally doesn't change the further up you go. You're just the kind of things that you'll see are a little bit different. So I will go to 18s, whatever it is. Yep. Okay, cool. So again, just try to keep one eye on what we just saw. Hopefully you see that there's similarities in what happens at each level. Okay, so again, if we're looking there, body shape's not great, timing isn't great. All right, but if I think back to the 16s, at least everybody's kind of at the same height this time, and we get a bit of pressure and we can get a little bit of go forward. Going up to Warriors regional level, so Warriors are in the white here. Again, not 100%, but height's not bad. At least you can kind of see everybody here, and it looks like a scrum. Whereas at the 16s level, it didn't really. And then this is at the national level. So there's two in here. This one's not a great example. The next one is a better example when Dan fixes it. So if we think about back to those principles around kind of strata scrum lower, tighter connections, collective timing. So kind of what's happened here is Dan's a little bit high, so on the right here. And then again, if we think about that line, so he's allowed the prop to come in, but he's not got his chest down, so the outcome isn't what we want. And this is about 5 or 6 scrums later. So same player, but this time, if we look at the difference in his height there, so just that little focus point allows him. It's exactly same players. So that little focus point allows them to apply pressure and keep himself down, whereas before he was very high and he couldn't put any pressure through. So again, just to show you what it looks like at the different levels, and what I found when I was looking back through it is that 16s and 18s regional, it's all a bit individual. By the time we get to Warriors, it's a little bit better. It's starting to look more what we want. And then by the time we get to the national stuff, it's pretty spot on. And then it's just about them. It's in like 18s experiencing, international rugby and putting into practice what they've been learning all year. So again, same, just to show you the difference from what we were looking at before. So the same drills, same activities, 3v3. Again, there's lots of stuff that we can be looking at. We could say where Kev's feet are probably a bit too far in front of him. George could drop his knees a little bit. Callum's bum's probably a bit too high, but generally everybody's in line. Again, it's just about spending time in that. Nobody's trying to demolish anybody. They're just leaning in and then get in there and just try to build as much pressure and scrum for a long period. Certainly in Scotland, we don't produce the biggest players in the world in terms of front rows. So what the national team look to do, and you might see at the weekend, and you may have seen it last week, is we want to try and scrum for a long period of time, and we want to try and scrum as longer, because the toll that takes on bigger teams like England, France, etc. throughout the game gives an opportunity as you get deeper into the game. So again, it's about spending time in here, and what I would try and do with my players is rather than doing 10 scrums, I would do 5 long ones, because you'll get more out of that in terms of learning, I would say. Try to rush through, we're going to do 10, 15 scrums. You might get, because they're rushing, they're not really getting an opportunity to feel how to move, what to put their feet, how can they get out of positions, how can they get into good positions. Whereas if you spend, you make them scrummage for a long time, providing that they can do it safely, then I find you get a bit more out of that. So yeah, and then we would go again pre-engaged, and then we would ask them to bind and then go to the set. So from there, again, Louis, this boy hadn't really played prop at this point. This was maybe his 4th or 5th session. So again, he needs to get his feet back, drop his knees down, keep his elbow up. But again, we just put them into these positions and try and get them to understand and experience. And again, we're not trying to get him to win here. We're just trying to get them to spend time in these positions for as long as we can. And then, so once we've done the kind of, so we didn't really do this with the 16s, but I find you can do it with 18s. So we're asking them to go through the process of bind and then into the set, and then you can say, right, so we were saying to George here, you can go and have a go, and Kev and Callum, I think it is, they're just trying to resist. Now, thinking back to those 18s principles about maintaining body shape going forward, so probably not great at that. Big strong boy, but again, his work on is trying to stay as flat, stay in that position, but going forward. And again, it's just giving them reps at that to get that practice in. And then we would go again, same full 7-on-7, and go through the same kind of process. And that's 18s. Hopefully everybody's keeping up. So then moving on to 20s. So this is obviously the kind of top level of the academy stuff. So here's it's kind of different. This is Cali v Glasgow under 20. So again, we can see that setup's a little bit better. Again, it looks more like a scrum now. We've got decent height, but again, it's still quite individual. So the theme is the same. Generally at regional level, it's very individual, and it gets a bit messy towards the end. We go up to the Warriors level. Again, it's everybody looks kind of a bit more comfortable, a bit more uniform, and then this one ends up in some good shapes. So some really good shape there from the Edinburgh tight head. But again, it's starting. We're not seeing as much of a mess now, and then this is kind of where we're trying to build to it, I guess. Now we went into this with thinking, the scrum is somewhere we're going to struggle or potentially be under pressure, but the boys worked really hard, and we see some really good pictures. Again, so thinking about that long time the scrums, those trying to scrummage longer, not rushing, just working together, and then that's Ireland lose their shape under pressure. So that's the kind of outcome we're trying to get to. In terms of what we would do training wise at under 20 level, let me see if I can pull it up. So all the kind of body shape stuff, etc., applies to what we're doing all the way through. But just with the logistics of being in a Six Nations competition, etc., you don't generally get a lot of time. So you would spend more time doing kind of live scrums, as it were. So this is a different angle. So just again, we would just going through the live scrums. So let's see if I can get that away. These angles are quite good to watch. So again, if we're thinking about what would be as square as we can, as straight as we can, loose head probably not achieved that here. These are these connections that we're speaking about. So Connor needs to get his bum in here to support the loose head a bit more. Quite good on this side, on the tight head side. All right. But again, the way that we would train this is, as you can kind of see stuff in the back now, is we would do maybe 5 scrums, and then they would go into defence practice just as forwards, and then they would go into some 5 lineouts, and then come back to the scrums, and we just rotate that round for 20 minutes. Generally at this level, the players are still learning and they're still developing, but they kind of know what their points are, what they need to work on. So they help each other quite a lot as well. Like with sound in the video, you hear them feeding back and kind of motivating each other and stuff. So at the kind of 20s level of academy, we're just hopefully fine tuning. There was a lot more work done, like looking back at these videos and stuff, than actually doing scrum and the kind of training sessions, as it were, because time is limited, as it is with everybody, I guess. So yeah, so that's a very whirlwind tour of the scrum. I appreciate there'll probably be some questions, so happy to answer as many as I can.
None's come through on the chat, but if you want to ask a question, then unmute yourself, Clarky. You got a question there?
Yeah, I do. Thanks for that, Kris. That was really interesting. I like some of that stuff, and as a senior coach in that 3, I'm kind of thinking we're probably around about the 16s type of level there when I'm looking at some of the techniques and work-ons. But there's one thing that's we had Charles Sampson doing a call with us last night, just talking about the refereeing side of things, and one of the issues that came up was the length of time it takes to reset.
Yep.
And the work-ons that World Rugby are looking at the moment in terms of the overall game, and how scrums are taking time up in the game. Is there anything you guys are doing to try and future-proof what you do in terms of, you know, a scrum you might not be given the time that you want to reset in the way that you want to do?
Yeah, so I mean, we've played around with law variations and stuff in our younger age group, and our under 17s do it. So their competitions that they'll have, it's like you've only got 30 seconds from the scrum being awarded to get in and get playing, and there's no resets. So if the scrum goes down, it's the team that put the ball in that get it, and we play from there. Certainly, like the more I've been involved, the kind of more I'm going towards that kind of training that we saw at the end. So it's like you go from scrum to line out to practice, and it's not spending time going through, you know, so many scrums and so many line outs and stuff. It's how random can we make it within forward unit stuff, because you still need to tick off the stuff that you need to do. But yeah, and then even like playing games where we can have 3-on-3 scrums and stuff, and just putting them under pressure as much like from a time perspective. That's what I would do, and that's what we try to do. I certainly, as you're saying, you know, there's the laws are being adapted in Australia and New Zealand to try and look at that. But yeah, I think if it is going to come this way, the teams that have practiced that way will probably be the teams that come out on top. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. Thanks.
Burney, can you see the chat coming through there from Stuart?
Yeah. Yeah, so like we would use video. So we're quite lucky in terms of that all our sessions are videoed. We've got analysts and stuff like that. You know, so we can send players the videos. They've got a responsibility to watch them as well. So like at 16s, we would probably do it. Oh, Smudge will know better than me what he done this year, but we would kind of encourage them to do at least one of the sessions would have a video element to it, and then send it out to them. At 18s, we would look at it every session. We would have done something. We've got long time, and then with national stuff, it's all videoed and tagged and sent out to players, and we engage with them on the platform that we use. So we'll put a scrum in, and I'll ask a question, and like, you know, so Doug, what was your body position like here? What could you do a little bit better? And then we try and get feedback that way. At Clubland, so to make it a bit more specific to you guys, if you can get the videos out to players and before training and get them to watch it, it can reduce the time that you spend on it. So when I was playing at Curry, we would have the videos sent out to us, and then you would look at them, and then by the time we got to training, there would be one or two that the coach would pick out, and because there's already been a little bit of discussion, and it can be done like nowadays. Like we do it with the boys in the academy at the moment. We've got like a scrum group and a line-out group that are assessing the Six Nations, so they're looking at the Scotland games and feeding back, and I try and get them to do it with each other as much as I can. So rather than me saying, go and look at this, or here's a clip to watch, try and get them to come with a clip and get the other players to answer. So yeah, video is a massive part of what we do, and we try to do as much as we can. But again, having been a player with it, if it's constant, it can become a bit of a chore. But certainly for our players, it's something that if they want to be professionals, they need to have an appreciation of, and it's part of their job essentially. So if lessons learned, okay, so if we look at the 20s scrum, so the big one that they got the penalty from was 20 seconds. So yeah, I would try to be going 30 seconds if you can. It will depend on your players, you know, what their abilities like, how conditioned they are. But it could be, you know, it could be a theme that you start with 10 seconds and you add a second every time, or every session, and build it up just like you would do in the gym or stuff like that. It's as long as I mean, I've seen the national team, they've been trying to do like 60-second scrums at one point. So the ball's like going in hooked, and then they put another ball in, hook, ball in, hook. But they'll only do that a couple of times because, again, if anybody's been in a scrum for longer than 30 seconds, it's a dark place. But yeah, it can be specific to your team. It will depend on your ability and stuff. 16s will be less just because that's the nature of it. Adults can go a little bit longer. providing they've got the conditioning. So in terms of this scrum machine, I have a love-hate with it. So when I was coaching at adult level in Scotland, we had a terrible scrummage machine, so we just didn't use it. And we spent more time on the kind of 3v2s, etc., 5-on-5, 3-on-3, etc. So we found we got a better return out of that because of the limited time. The thing I would say about a scrummage machine is it doesn't push back. It doesn't go up, doesn't go down. It's not going to give you any feedback, whereas as a player will. Now there's places for it, maybe around the timing side of things, but 16s I wouldn't use it. I would use an individual sled if you didn't have enough bodies, or if you wanted to really look at body position that way, you can do that way. I wouldn't do 16s, or I probably wouldn't even spend much time on it. 18s, 20s, will probably use it a couple of times just for a timing, but I'm not a big fan. I prefer scrum as players because that's what happens in a game.
Thanks, Roger. You got a question there?
No, I was just going to back up what Kris was saying about the video. The time constraints you can sometimes have with the 16s, you've got your mobile phone in your pocket. So taking a quick snapshot of body shape is brilliant on getting a player to understand the angles he's at. So if the shoulders are way above hips and all the rest of it, his feet are too far apart. We've seen all the pictures just now. If you can take a quick snap on your phone and show him there, he's got instant feedback.
Yeah, and one thing that I've just been playing around with and going to introduce it this week is a lot of the boys now will screen record things on their phones. So if they see a clip in the Six Nations or the highlights or something, it's they can easily screen record it and then send it in a WhatsApp group that way. So it's getting easier and easier for them to access footage as well. And whether it's if you put your training on YouTube or your games on YouTube and set little tasks like, right, okay, I want you to find 3 good scrums where we maintain body position against pressure, and they can send them in, and that way you can see what their understanding of it is as well. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can challenge them with the video stuff.
Yeah, I think with the video, you're just dealing in facts. It's a case of that is what happened rather than you said and somebody else said what they thought they said.
Cool. Any other scrum question or going to line out, Sam?
Nothing come through in the chat, so crack on, I think, unless somebody wants to interject.
Cool. So line out. So I've kind of split this into 2 areas. So the throw is obviously very important, if not as important as the rest. So again, under 16s, what we would say to our players, or what we want players to start doing, is find their throwing process. So just like you hear about kickers having a routine, golfers with a golf swing, like we want it to be the same every time. So whether that's they put their right hand on the ball first, then their left hand, or what's their visualization, what they saying to themselves, just something to take away, as much of the variables as they can, but they need to spend time finding out what works for them. So finding their throwing process at 16s, and then just focusing on 5 and 10 meters. So what you'll find is if you go beyond that, the throw becomes a lot harder due to technique, strength, the time that the boys have got to lift. The timing's not always there, so and it becomes a lot less accurate as you go longer. So can we get players to really speed throws, so low and hard throws, to get the ball in as quick as we can at 16s. And then this is the kind of key things that I would say for under 16s is just focusing on effective throw, lift, jump and delivery. So not having 40 different line-out moves and worrying about your maul setup and things like that. It's can you throw properly? Can you lift? Can you jump? And then can you deliver the ball to the scrum half? Now, it's not to say that you shouldn't know about mauls and understand what they are and have some practice at them, but I would say the majority of your practice should be off the top, short and line-outs to create space, and just really focus on throw, jump, lift and delivery. Whereas again, back in the day, old school would have been, go through the line-outs, just do that, and we'll just run through our setups and do that. I would spend a lot more time on this stuff rather than your line out calls and things, just because, as we'll kind of see, it's if you don't get that right, you can't do the movements, you can't do the speed line outs, your maul won't work because you're not going to win the ball. And then we want all of our back five, so our locks and our back rows to be able to lift and jump. Now some of them will start that process at under 16s when they come to us, but we would encourage as many players to be able to lift and jump as we can. We have had instances where players will come in and say, "Oh, I'm a second row, but I don't jump." Which again, if you want to be a professional rugby player, you have to pick up that skill. So that's an important one for us, and we don't have to be obviously with sizes and differences. And you'll see a couple of big players that struggle with it just because people can't lift them. But it doesn't mean just because they're if they're under 16, it doesn't mean that you can expose them to some kind of being lifted by an older player at some point in the year, whether it's a combined training session, as long as it's done in conjunction with the right people and coaches and squads together, then there's no harm in exposing them to that environment as much as you can. And then identifying space is really all I would focus on. So like, where are they marking? Okay, they're marking the middle. Let's go to the front, and then don't worry about much more than that. It's can they see the space? And then as they get older, they'll start to preserve it and maintain it and attack it a lot better. But first bit I would say is identifying the space, because that's essentially what the line out is. You want to throw it where they aren't, so you can win the ball. Then going up to 18s, so start developing that throwing process. So hopefully by now that they've got an idea of what works for them. It's really just honing that in and making it pretty consistent. So developing that, and then in terms of their throws, we'd be looking at 5, 10, 15 metres. So that'd be front, middle, tail, with the speed balls, and then a throw catch. So that's essentially when you throw the ball in, that starts the line out. So nobody would move before the throw happened. So that obviously takes a bit of timing and a bit of confidence. So that's why it's not in it under 16s. But we would look to start to develop that, and certainly at national level, those kind of lineouts would be used. In terms of the principles, so start to look at attack and defence. So at 16s, I would go, 90% on your own lineout, on your own winning your own ball, and maybe 10% on defending. In terms of, it's another opportunity they get to lift and compete, but I wouldn't spend too much time on training line-out defence. But at 18s, you would start to certainly look at both and a bit of consistency, probably about 60-40, I would say. And then speed would come into that here. So 16s, just get things right, get the technique right. Don't worry about the speed too much. But at 18s, try to get across the ground as quick as you can, get into the air as quick as you can, and deliver the ball away from the line-out as quick as you can. So that's where we would really ramp up that stuff, and then starting to vary lineouts. So again, at the 16s, I said identifying space. If you've got less people in the lineout, there's more space to attack. There's less things to worry about, less obstacles. But at 18s, probably look to start varying shorter lineouts, full lineouts, just to develop that understanding. And then in terms of preserving space, so that's mainly looking at that from when you're in the lineout. In line, I've got a video to highlight it, but if you watch a couple of lineouts from an 18s game or maybe even the kind of senior game, and you'll see that people jump and land in different places, so they close the gap in the lineout. We want a gap so there's space to attack, but being able to preserve space only comes if you can lift properly, if you can jump properly, and you can move across the ground. So yeah, that would be the priorities at 18s. And then at 20s, we would look at a consistent throwing process. So much like the scrum, we would expect they now know exactly what works for them, and they can do it consistently under pressure. We'd look for them to throw long and over 15. So just like George Turner done to Cam Redpath at the weekend, that ball over the top is a good attacking option. And a throw catch again. And in terms of what a shape ball is, so if you think about the speed ball, will just go kind of flat and hard. A shape would be like an arc, so you're having to throw over defenders and then drop into on top of the receiver. Again, front, middle, tail, and again that's another skill, and it comes through practice and being confident in your throw. So that's why we don't worry about it too much until 20s. We'd look to really hammer that at 20s, and then again, this is where the kind of tactics and strategy come in. So we, like at national level, you would select lineouts and you would say, right, this is going to work against this. team, this is going to work against this team, and how do we want to defend, how do we want to attack in certain areas of the pitch. But again, that would only really be under 20s. You would speak maybe a little bit about that, but more thinking around, you know, we're going to use this because this is our strength, we're going to use that because it's our strength, rather than we're going to use this line out because that's what the opposition do. And then you'll see a lot more movement lineouts, obviously, just because people are better at defending, so you want to create a bit of deception. And then again, the maul really comes into its own at over or under 18s. 18s will do a bit, but we won't consider it as like as an attacking weapon. We'll probably still try and move the ball away from the line out as quick as we can. But 20s, we certainly got a lot of joy out of using the maul as an attacking weapon. Cool. So that's the processes. Again, same process with the clips. 16. Sorry, 2 seconds. Cool. So exactly the same. Just going to show some lineouts from the regional level. So I've got a couple of clips from each one, but so again, thinking back to like short lineouts, there's lots of space, but again, the throw is generally a limiting factor. Lift, so let's win the ball at the front. So again, if we're looking at our throw or jump and our lift, not got much control here. We want that to be straight up and down if we can. And then again, the delivery. So the delivery part's something that's probably overlooked in the lineout. Now, again, if we're throwing to the front, we want the ball in his hand as quick as we can, which allows us to get a quick pass away. But again, because our lift hasn't been great, our jump hasn't been great, you know, that affects the delivery, which then has a knock-on effect to the ball, how the ball gets passed to here, which gives less time and space. So again, it's something that we look to hammer as much as we can, and line out practices, and we see where possible. I would always have somebody as a scrum half to pass the ball to off the top, just to give that practice. So again, just because our throws may be a bit lacking, but also our timing's a wee bit off. And again, we've not really identified where the space is. So it just leads to that mistake. Now we still get the ball away, which is fine, but it's just to kind of show you the different points that come up through the regional stuff. Cool. So then, as we go into the Warriors stuff, so we're hoping it's a little bit better still. Again, so we've saw where the space is and done well to get to that space. So they've only got one kind of single man lift, so you would hope that we would be quicker there. Whereas in the last clip, somebody was standing next to us defending, but we still threw the ball because that's what we were going with the call. But we get to the space, it's a better throw. Okay, delivery's fine. It could be off the top, could be quicker. But he's made a good decision. He's not caught it cleanly, so bring it down, and then that makes life a bit easier. This again, so it's same kind of problem. Throws maybe not being accurate, but again, our lift is quite slow, and again we're throwing it into traffic, which makes the throw harder, but also makes us less likely to secure the ball. This is against Saracens, which was a big culture shock for their boys, but again, still managing to realise that there's a disconnect here at the front. So we've identified that space, better lift, much better delivery off the top, and it allows us to get the ball away quicker. So again, that lineout's successful because we've got our throw, our jump, and our lift right. And then again, just it can be done, but again, just to kind of highlight the timing issue here. So the time, ideally, we want that ball to arrive as second that he gets in the air. But again, because they're young, the timing's a little bit off. So again, it's just, and then that affects, because they're having to hold them up there for longer than what they'd be used to, it affects how we can deliver the ball, which then puts us under a little bit more pressure. But by the time we get to national level, they've managed to hopefully get better. That was the aim anyway. So we can add a wee bit of tiny bit of movement, but it's still a good throw and the howling wind down in Largs, and then much better delivery. So in terms of how we do that, and again, it's just to show that we don't really do anything fancy. We just keep things as simple as we can and spend time. Same with the scrum stuff. So we've got multiple things going on here. So we've got hookers throwing at the back. We've got boys just practicing lifting in the place. They're kind of helping each other, so they're giving each other coaching points, because we just keep it really simple. We're just trying to get up in the air as quick as we can, get a strong lift, get as close together as we can, and just reps and spend time practicing. So lots of activity, lots of people working, finding out what works, what doesn't work. Throwers can throw. So rather than standing in a line, going through different calls, etc., again, just spending as much time, getting as many opportunities to do that. I think, again, if we think about how many lineouts are potentially in a game, if the only kind of time that they get a chance to practice their lifting their jump is when you're doing a full lineout. Some people might not be involved. Some prop at the back might only lift once or twice in your session. So things like this this is these kind of small units again that we spoke about. So moving different ways back and forward. And then we would add a hooker in and just challenge them at different points. So we've got a bit of a longer throw, so that's maybe that 10 metre. We've got 5 metre throws. We've got, okay, we don't have a hooker here, but we can still practice. We can still practice our lift and our jump. And again, so that's, again, if you just look down here on the left, thinking about that time. So think about the throw that went to the tail, that they had to hold them up for longer than they thought. So again, asking them to spend a couple of seconds up there, get it right, and then come down. So rather than just kind of rushing through, it's again spending that time looking at how we can stress them and put them under pressure. If we look at Ben here as well, so we didn't have anybody to be a scrum half, but he can still practice his movement. So if we look, it really snaps the ball down from the top point of the jump, snaps it down so that he could deliver, or it could go into a maul. So yeah, again, we don't do anything overly fancy. There's a couple of exercises that I think I've got in the 20s video around, racing to cones and then going up and stuff. But it's just, again, it's just doing the basics, doing it really well, and getting this bit right before worrying about movement and calls and stuff like that. So that's the 16s, 18s. Good to go. Sorry, it's been a while since I've delivered a webinar, been on furlough. Okay, so again, think about the similarities. Is there similarities at what you're seeing at regional level to national level? So obviously the space is there. You're lucky to be 6'10" as well, which helps. But again, we're just looking at throw, jump, lift, and then what we do with the ball, and how we get the ball away. So again, it's still a short line out, but there's that timing issue, and we're maybe not as quick to react in here to get Max up. Again, he's a big boy, but it's kind of similar to what we saw at Scrum. It's sometimes a little bit individual, but then we go up to Warriors. So it's kind of same boys that are involved in these clips. So much better, lifted at full extension. Delivery could be better. Probably just kind of floated it away. Again, shortened line out. Where's the space? And that's a better delivery. Throw probably could have been a bit quicker. But again, they've identified here that this player's turn, so we're always going to get to there quicker. So that's where the space is, take the easiest space. And then when we come to national, so again, if you look at England's defence, so they're kind of set up the same, but England are slightly in front, which means if you were to go at the front here, they would probably beat you. So again, this is where you probably start the movement stuff comes in. But again, it's not the best throw. That's probably where you would want to develop that shape, so that curve throw. But again, they're still under 18 and still learning. But the movement was pretty good in identification of space to get there. And then again, so still short lineouts. So again, thinking about how can we maintain as much space as possible to attack. And then again, it's those movements. But really good throw, caught right at the top, and managed to get speed across the ground, speed into the air, and then again just brought it down because they keep it as secure as possible. And that's the 18s. So right, bear with me a second till I get the 20s because it's on a different programme. Sam, can you see this?
Yeah. If you can't see that, just let me know in the chat. But I think it should be good.
Two seconds till I find the right bit. So yeah, at 20s level, it was kind of the same in terms of what you spend time doing. So hopefully we can see. We're lucky we've got a multitude of cameras at once, so somebody what the players just again purely just to show you what the players would get. So I'll turn the sound off. So they would have access to this, so there'd be something watching just the hookers for their throw. But again, so this was the kind of thing about preserving space. So if you can see the blue cones, so that identifies their channel. So what we don't want is we don't want them jumping in the channel but then landing out of it, because that makes it easier for the opposition to get into your space and closes the space. So just try to work into that. Again, it's smaller units. We've got 9s. We've got people playing 9. You know, and we've came to this after a scrum or a defence session. And again, it's just getting reps and opportunities to practice and still doing those skills that we're talking about lift, throw, jump, and deliver. Let's see if we can. So again, thinking about the stuff that we saw in terms of the 18s, just a little bit slow to get up, but here we're really looking for them to be quick and as quick as we can and maintain that space. And that should hopefully transfer into. You see that, Sam?
Yep.
So yes, now we're asking them. They're up against professional players. Some of them are professional players. It's maybe not just as simple. So there's quite a bit of movement, speed, and again, this coming into that bigger picture stuff. This leads to a try, but again, it's because they've done the throw, the jump, the lift well, and they've picked the right option. So even though we went well, you know, they're still getting a lot of pressure at this level. So again, but they need to be really switched on in terms of throw, jump, lift, and they need to have practiced. They need to have done it, and it needs to be habit so that they can make good decisions. So again, that's why I'm saying that, you know, at 16s they'll have a couple of calls and they'll go through them, but they'll spend more time doing the throw, jump, lift, so that they can get into positions like this. And that's a whirlwind tour of the lineout as well. Is there any questions on? I don't know.
There was one that came through in the chat from Stuart, Kris. Well, let people have, I think.
So how does the balance shift through the age groups from telling, guiding, empowering? Yeah, so the way that I would approach it is that at 16s, you generally have to inform them a bit more around things like how do we identify space? Why do we want to identify it? They've got less experience of doing a line out correctly, so you need to guide them through that. But as quick as we can, you know, once we've given them the information and we've given them the tools, we want them to lead on it, and we want them to be responsible for developing it. So again, it comes back to what I was saying about the video stuff. I want them to come to me with videos and be identifying points and good clips and bad clips rather than me having to always go to them. And I think one thing is we probably underestimate them at times. You know, they're they do see a lot more than we probably think, and they understand a lot more. But I would just put them into the positions and put them into the situations and see what they come up with. Give them the opportunity to go away and come up with lineouts or 18s, or ask them, right, what do you think the key principles of a good lineout at your under 16s are, and what they come back with that could guide you on what you need to do, because you could be thinking, they need to know this, and I need to inform them about all that, but 5 of those things out of 7 they already know and they understand, so then you can focus on the other 2. But yeah, we would empower them as quickly as we can. You obviously, when you get to 20s, it's very much they kind of know what they're doing, and they've got experience in lots of different environments, whether that's club, pro team, other age groups that have been in, so they can come up with a lot more. At 16s, you kind of have to give them some stuff, but once you give them it, we expect them to then lead it and develop it and make it better for them. That's the way we approach that.
And we got any other questions?
Just another one from me. Sorry, Kris, it probably falls on from Stuart's question. How much kind of problem solving do you do with them as you go through the age group? That you might have a very, very good defensive line out against you. Do you let them work that sort of stuff out, or? Yeah,
so I would try and bring that up in training, and so with the 18s, for example, we had access to the videos for the other teams, so we would say, right, I would say, here's what the borders are going to do, here's how they're going to attack, how would you guys defend it, how do you want to defend it, and let them come up with that, and then obviously if they're way off tangent, bring them back in, but yeah, we try and set as many scenarios. I'm a big fan of, if I'm working on my defence, I'll tell the attack where to go, and let's challenge them here, or let's attack this way, and then see if they work out what's happening and how to stop it. And then getting it's a good thing that I've found is, if you're doing attack to be defence, and you get the attack to feed back to the defence, where was the pressure, when did they feel under the most pressure, how did it feel playing against that defence, so that's the kind of way I would go about it. Set up as many of the scenarios as you can and let them problem solve from that way. Certainly at 16s, they're quite shy, and they're maybe not got the experience, so nobody wants to kind of put their head above the parapet and say the wrong thing. But once you kind of, we done it by having players within the groups that would be leaders, and they would we would go to them and say, right, what are you thinking here? Right, this is the message we want you guys to get across to the players, and we shifted that round throughout the programme, so that by the time we kind of came towards the end of the programme, everybody had a leadership role somewhere, and that seemed to work quite well.
There's one in the chat about jumping exercises, Kris, and then we'll flip to James, and then we'll flip to the next question in the chat.
Cool. It's going to sound really simplistic, but just jumping, so start from a standing start and just going through in fact, let me see if I can get one of the clips. It's probably better than me trying to explain it sitting down.
Malky, there's a guy, Ian Peel from Saracens, does a lot of stuff on YouTube and online as well. He does a lot of individual jumping stuff, which is really good at the start of it. I think he does it essentially at the start of every line-out masterclass he does some jumping exercises there, which would be maybe good for you to take and have a look at.
Yeah, he's good. He's a Saracens forward coach and was involved with England as well. But if we look, try and find a decent one. So if we watch this player here, so he'll be doing what we call a jump into a jump. So he jumps into his jump, and he's very animated with his arms and stuff. So we can take away as much of that starting movement as possible, so that it comes from he almost starts, maybe not there, hands are in tight, and it's initiated with his hands to go. Because if we go like this and start swimming, as we call it, that's a trigger. So the opposition know that, he's about to jump because his hands are coming up. But just spending time from there, and I guess you can do things like hopping over cones, and there's stuff in the gym that you can do around plyometrics and stuff, but it's more being able. It's not the most natural thing to go from this position into a jump. So just getting players to spend time doing that and then putting it into here. You can break it down into little things just for variety, but again, thinking about the amount of time you've got and how many things you want to get out of your session. If you can do it in this three man stuff, then I would say that's better than just trying to do it in isolation. If you've got limited time, if you've got more time, you can break it down. But I would sneak it into gym sessions before I would put it into your take out some of your rugby time. I would try and get them in these units, or you can do single man. So you can have the single man lift, so at the front, so they're just jumping from there. But I would try and sneak it into your session as much as you can, rather than breaking it down with the time that you've got. But that's just my opinion. There's other coaches out there would do it differently, but I know what it's like when you've got limited time.
Jimmy, do you want to unmute yourself, mate?
Yeah, hi Chris. I found myself falling into a sort of trap of coaching best practice. Now I have to fluctuate between the different age groups I coach, and I have to adapt my style based on their ability.
Yeah.
When is the right time to start talking about the tactical benefits of scrum and line out? So you can coach best practice.
Yeah.
I always think safety, scrummage square and straight, scrummage level, basic line out safety and getting it right. When do you start talking about scrummaging off centre, tactical benefits? When do you start talking about turning the jumper to face your 9?
So we would,
that.
in terms of the jumper stuff, that kind of stuff, the tactical side, I would start discussing it around 18s. More for the fact, not to go like, oh yes, we're going to develop a massive line-out playbook and all this kind of stuff, but it's more so that they start to understand what they're coming to or what they're going to. Like we want the players to be as competent around that stuff as quickly as we can. So we look at about 18s. At 16s, the deepest we would go is where's the space and how do we get to the space. Like how can we keep, so if the space is at the front, how do we get there, but how can we also keep that space there? And then that will bring out some discussions around about, maybe we have a dummy jump in the middle and we go forward and things like that. But then like at 20s, we would look at, right, what are our first 3 lineouts going to be? Okay, we'll shoot to the front 2 and see if they follow us, and then that'll open up space in the middle. But that it's all underpinned by, if you've got a under 16 team that can throw, jump, lift, deliver spot on every time, by all means progress them. Start speaking about that stuff. But again, I always look at it as how much time do I have in the week and what am I going to get the best out of? So if I spend 20 minutes speaking about, how to open a seam up at the tail of the line out, so we can have a breakout, but they can't throw, jump, lift to the tail, then that's 20 minutes I could have spent with that. You have to, you'll know what it is. It's like you want to take stuff from the club to the school and that kind of stuff. But if your players are up for it and they can do it, then crack on. But what is it at the expense of is where I would put it. If you're giving up time that you could be spent on making them better as individuals for that age group, because they know next year they're going to get line out tactics, etc. Against England and stuff. I would go that. But if you've got players that can do it, then by all means crack on.
The basics first. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, man.
No worries.
There's 2 questions in the chat from Stuart there, Kris, if you want to have a look at
them. Time on task. So there's lots of ways to look at this. I can only really give you examples from what we do, and then one example of in England. So our players would get the regional programme in the summer, which would last around 6 weeks. 16s would have been in twice a week, Smudge, were you, or you 3? Twice, yeah. So the 16s were in twice a week. 18s were in 3 times a week. And then 20s is different. So they kind of get picked up a little bit later because they're in club programmes and full-time academies as well. So 3 times a week in the summer, with plus a game for about 6 weeks, and then there would be a little block in October. So we would have kind of weekly sessions, but you're pulling players together from Glasgow and Cali. They would have a couple of games in October, and then it's international stuff. So depending on where you are, what level in terms of age groups. So 16s, we would have 3 or 4 camps as Scotland, and then we go down to play the Welsh academies. And when we go down and play, so we play the under 17s essentially, because up here we are 1st of January. So your year group is your date of birth year is what year you're in. But down in England and Wales, they do the same as what the clubs do. So they'll do 1st of September. So you're generally playing against older players. And then 17s is a small programme, just generally because it's a busy school year with exams. So they'll have a kind of small international programme at the end of the year around April, and they'll have a kind of academy festival tournament in February. And then 18s is bigger, so they'll do a national program. So their national program will start in January, and they'll pretty much be every couple of weeks all the way through. So that's what we do. Like in terms of competition wise at national level, academy level, so we would train twice a week generally. So you'd have a Monday, Wednesday session in your region, and then we would come together as much as we can. And that's again when they had the breaks in the calendar for club and school. And obviously we pick from a limited pool of Caledonia and the other areas that pick up them. When I went down to Saracens to spend a couple of days there, when we went to play them, they'll generally train every week at least. They'll do 4 days a week in the summer for a block, but then they'll go every kind of Wednesday or Monday. They would do a session at 16s and 18s, so they would have an academy team, whereas our teams would train in blocks, and you would do skill sessions just as players in the region. But they are under 15 programme. It's 1,300 players in it. So that's just for Saracens, and then you've obviously got all the other clubs as well. So I think what we do is we generally catch up around 20s level, probably because we're generally playing behind, if that makes sense. So we're playing older kids all the way through. I mean, we would love more time with the players, but like having been in the club land as well and been in the development land, it's you're asking, if we had more time with players, they would either have to put it on top of what they're doing, or they would have to stop doing what they were doing at club and school and or start making choices, which we obviously don't want to do. So yeah, it's time on task is something we would always take more. We would always want to do more. But that's probably why I speak a lot about what's the best thing you can do with your session, what's the best thing you can do at that time with the amount of time you've got. Try to spend as much time on task within the time you've got is more important than trying to find time and squeeze extra time all the time. A lot of time in that sense there. If that answers the question, hopefully. In defence, yes, we would. Again, it would probably come in more around 18s rather than 16s. Just try to focus on your own stuff. But yeah, we would 100%. You certainly at 20s level as well. You can start to look and see. So we have 2 players here, and we're going to go that way. This player would be the one that moves first to try and to set the lineup off, and you can kind of see they're itching to go, so they know they're going to be the trigger. So we can get players to read that and look and see, like, if they shift their weight forward, that could be a sign that they're about to go. So just be ready. But yeah, we would definitely get them to look for cues and tells, and I certainly watch the hookers as well. And as you go through the game, you'll pick up what they do. And at 20s level, we would look at the hookers and we would say, right, does he underthrow? Does he overthrow? What does his body look like when he's going to throw long? Not to say that it gives you a massive advantage. It's just things that some players will remember it, some players will look for it. The best players will they'll pick it up. But we've got the time. That's what I'm saying. You've got the time, you've got the resources, so you can do that kind of stuff.
There's not any other questions come through there, Kris? I think I've got one in kind of in conjunction with Clarkie, would be around hooker throwing from like 16s and maybe downwards. And would you just let kids throw who feel like they can throw, or would you kind of pigeonhole early kids who you need to throw, like a hooker, for instance, or how would you work that?
No, I mean, like if they can get as much experience as they can. I mean, if you look at Stuart McInally was a back row all the way into the pro game, you know, so then he had to learn how to throw when he got there. It's the same kind of idea with learning to play across the front row. You know, if you look like you might end up there, or you could end up there, then there's no harm in practicing as early as you can. You might even you could rotate it on a weekly basis if you wanted to, whatever fits for your squad. But I would encourage as many people practicing throwing, because you could find somebody that could be the best thrower as a flanker, but who's to say that you have to have him in the line? You want to win your line out first and foremost. There's no point in having the right people in the line out ready to play the next phase if you don't win the line out. So I would get as many people throwing as they can, and then like we've moved people. We would move people. We think, right, okay, you look like you want to end up as a hooker, a prop, a back row, etc. So we would then task them with going away and working on that. That's why you might get kids coming back and say, oh, I need to practice my scrummaging, my jumping, etc. But it's very hard to say you're going to be this when you're older at 15. So if they can get as much experience as they can, it's only going to be a good thing. So yeah, if they can get them doing it early, get them doing it early.
Perfect. That's good. Any other questions from anybody? Feel free to shout out. Quiet bunch tonight, Kris. Seems like you've covered everything, I think.
Yeah, listen. If that's thanks very much, guys. The reason I jumped on with Sam, it's not because I like him. It's more because, like, our job, certainly the region that we're in, we depend on clubs to spend time with the players and doing stuff. So, like, obviously it's hard at the moment. We know rugby and stuff, but the plan is, and always has been, is to try and do this kind of stuff, but you know, maybe out of the club or an area where people can come in and like we're not a closed book. You know, we want engagement as much as we can. It kind of always feels like everybody looks at the academy and goes, "Oh, what are they doing?" Like looking over the fence. But you know, if anybody wants to come to a session and wants to come and see what we do and stuff, just speak to Sam. More than welcome to come along and have a chat and see what goes on. Because it's only for our benefit. You spend more time with the players than we do. So if you know what we're doing and what we want, then it can only help them because you'll see them more than we do. So yeah, when we get back to normal, hopefully, if anybody wants to come to anything or wants to see or wants a chat about something, just speak to Sam and we can definitely set that up.
Cheers, Kris. Well, if there's nothing else, then again, thanks to Kris for coming along. It's been absolutely fantastic insight for some coaches, and the detail you go into is something else and a real good learning point. So hopefully spark some learning within the coaches, and yeah, like I say, it's pretty simple Scrum and Lineout, so it's good to see that you kind of dispelled that myth that it's complicated.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much.
Oh, come on.
Cheers, Kris. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, Kris.
That was great.
Cheers, Kris. Thanks very much. See you later.
Thanks enough.
Cheers, Joe. I think Burney's left. Just shot off.
First away.
He's gone. He's gone. His pizza must have been getting cold. Oh, music's come through.
I was so jealous of his beard. So good.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's absolutely next level, that.
Oh, good looking bastard.
A bit thrown in it and everything.
He knows it as well. He knows it. Everything all good with your smudge this week? How's this week's smudge?
Yeah, same. Snowed up. You got snot with you, Jim?
Yes, yeah. I'm pretty.
You done with it?
Yeah, I'm trying my hardest positive, but delivering online PE classes is not why I moved to Scotland.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with just, you know, what it's like, you know, when you deliver a session and you can feel the energy, and you know at the end of the session you know you got it right. There's none of that with online learning. It's none of that. You just finish the lesson, they all fuck off, and you're like,
yeah, that plan do, no idea almost, is it?
I've got no reason to complain. I'm in such a good position. You know, there are people who have lost their jobs and stuff like that, but I actually like my job. I want to go to work and coach. I want rugby.
Yeah.
And it's just shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we're still recording. Oopsies.